All right, what's up, guys? VV back with another video. And we got a lot to go over in today's video. We got a lot to unpack from what all happened this morning for us over here in the West, and it was like last night over in the East. But we've got, or maybe it was like midday. I don't even know what it was over in the East, but it was yesterday for them. But let's go ahead and let's get straight into today's video because we have a lot to talk about. Let me lay it out for you, break it down for you real quick. First up, we're going to be talking about the new bans and restrictions, okay? That's number one. After that, we're going to talk about a new leader that has been spoiled. Very, very fun there. And then number three, the last thing we got to talk about is block rotations, okay? A lot of stuff to talk about today, a lot of important stuff about the future of the game and all that good stuff. Okay, so with that in mind, I'll have everything timestamped in the general description. I'll have all relevant deck lists and links in the comment section below. And let's just get straight into this, guys, because we have so much to talk about. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please do not hesitate to put those down in the comment section below. Or hop on the VV Theory Discord. Link is in the channel description. This video is sponsored by Nin Garden. Their latest spring collection just dropped with 3 new designs, and to celebrate, they are running a spring sale. Buy one, get any classic mat 40% off with the code SPRINGSALE. Plus, use NIN10 for an automatic 10% off at the checkout. You can stack this with my promo code, the VV Theory, for an additional 5% off, bringing you to a total of 15% total savings on top of the 40% off. All right, guys, let's go ahead and break down this new bans and restrictions update here that will be taking place on April 1st, 2025. We got 4 new banned cards. No new restrictions. For those who might be wondering what the difference is, a banned card, you cannot have any copies, 0 copies in your deck. Whereas restricted cards, I think you can have 1 copy. So these are just banned cards; they're not restricted. And just to say this up front real quick, no cards from the previous bans and restriction list have been lifted. Those are still all banned and restricted as well. We just have 4 new additions to the banned and restricted list. Okay, so I'm going to read through each card real quick, and then we'll break down each one individually. First up is OP06086 Gecko Moria, and then there's OP07045 Jinbei, OP02117 Ice Age or 117 Ice Age, and then we have EB01059 Kingdom Come. We would also call this Rygo for anyone who uses the sim. That's the translation they stuck with on the sim, but the technical name is Kingdom Come. So let's just go ahead and go left to right on this, guy, so we can just break these down. I don't think anyone is surprised at hearing a Gecko Moria ban. I think people are more surprised with the events that might have got thrown in the list, or maybe Jinbei. But let me just start with Gecko Moria first. So Gecko Moria, 8 cost 9k, pulls a 4 cost or lower and a 2 cost or lower from your trash, puts it into play. One can be active, the other can be rested, and they're both going to get their own play effects. And you have an 8 cost 9k on the board and 2 other potentially very powerful characters, again with on play effects or whatever, blocker, you name it. This card was actually a menace for a very long time. I think the card's been out for about a year now or something like that. I don't know the exact date on that, but the card's been out for about a year for us over here in the West. And this was a card that I was actually calling for something to be done about it in the previous ban and restriction update, which happened when they got rid of red purple law. I was calling for Gecko Moria to get hit in that, whether it be banned, restricted, errated, whatever. Errata being, moving it to Thriller Bark leaders only or something like that, or restricting down to a 1 of, or just outright banning it like they've done now. But they determined, no, it wasn't a problem back then, but now it is. Okay, whatever. That's fine. I do think this card was a little bit too much for the future design space in the game. It limits it in just far too many ways, in my personal opinion. So I'm not exactly upset seeing Gecko Moria on the list. Now, I know a lot of players out there who use Gecko Moria in their deck, like Black Yellow Luffy, Lucci, maybe Smoker, whatever deck you might be playing, maybe even something off meta, something like Green Black Isho, Red Black Garp or something, whatever you might be playing, that's fine. But hear me out. I do think this card was actually forcing them to pull back on the design space for black for quite some time because of how powerful this card was. Any character that cost 2 or 4, they had to do some major balancing and fixing on. right? And I think that was a pretty serious problem going forward for them as far as like the design space goes. And I do think, let me say this right now, I believe that every card on here does help the future of this game, and it will help, you know, how do I say this? For the future long-term health of the game, I understand every one of these ban decisions, and we're going to try and break it, you know, each one down individually. So bear with me, be patient with me. But, you know, back to Gecko Moria. I think the card was just slightly too overtuned, and if they had made it where it was locked to a leader like Perona or Gecko Moria, like or Thriller Bark in general, I think it would have been fine. Or maybe if they locked it to colors only, because guys, it can just pull anything out of the trash that it wants to. It could be any color card as long as it's a 4-cost and a 2-cost or lower, 4-cost or lower, or a 2-cost or lower. And it's just, you know, it was just a little too strong. It was just a little bit overtuned. So I get getting rid of this card, and hopefully they'll replace it with something similar. Because with this card, think about it, it was an 8-cost, 9,000 power character that was pulling a 4-cost or lower and or a 2-cost or lower from your trash as well, right? And that was just able to do so much. It wasn't pulling cards from your hand. Notice how they've kind of course corrected over time, where now we have access to a card like the new 7-cost Rebecca. The new 7-cost Rebecca for Blue-Black Usopp for Dressrosa, it's a 7-cost card that's a 4,000 power character. And it can cheat out a 7-cost card, so an even bigger card than what Gecko could pull out, but then also a 4-cost card as well. But both cards had to come from your hand. So even though you're developing 3 bodies on the board at one time, you're throwing 3 cards out of your hand at one time. Whereas with Gecko Moria, you were typically developing 5 bodies on the board. 5, guys, that's correct. So in other words, it would be Gecko into Rebecca, into Helmeppo, into Spandine, into Lucci. All but one of those cards came from your trash. All but one of them came from your trash, and it was the biggest card. So all the smaller cards you already got access to earlier in the game. You got their full benefits. You got their full value early on. And then guess what? You played on the Gecko Moria, and now you get round 2 of all their value. And it just becomes so incredible, so incredibly powerful, and in my personal opinion, overtuned. So hopefully, I don't want to spend too much time on Gecko Moria. I think a lot of people saw this coming. If you didn't, you know, say something in the comment section below, but let's just please keep it peaceful. Let's please keep it respectful. But I will say this. I do think they saw how much we enjoy using a character like this in a deck like Black Yellow Luffy. And there is some talk about OP13. I know we're not even in OP11 yet, but the little rumor mill's been going. And I think in OP13 they're going to revisit the Three Brothers deck idea. Remember the ST13 had the Three Brothers bond thing going on, and in OP13, okay, so the set 13, not the starter deck, but the set 13, I think they're going to be revisiting that, and who knows, maybe in there we'll get some kind of access to a card that might be yellow or black or something that can pull 2 costs out of the trash, because I think the deck that got hurt the most from the Gecko Moria ban was actually Black Yellow Luffy. And I know that seems a little bit crazy because, hey, Lucci uses it to a very large effect, but Black Yellow Luffy's combo kind of disappears, whereas Lucci can now just run other top-end cards that, you know, just help them remove characters. I'm not saying it's going to be as good as what Gecko was doing. We all know how strong the Gecko, Rebecca, Lucci, Spandine, Helmeppo play was, or Suru for Helmeppo, whichever. We all know how powerful that play was, especially in combination with another card on this list with Ice Age. We know how strong that was. That was a very strong effect there. But I think they are going to probably try to find a way to make a more balanced version of Gecko Moria going forward. We'll see. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. I don't work at Bandai. I don't know anyone at Bandai. But I would not be surprised if they try to find a way to fill the gaps that are going to, you know, happen, you know, without removing this card for the format. It will probably be a much more fair version of it. You know, that it won't be as overtuned like I was saying. I don't like to say broken, but I think you guys know what I'm trying to say there. Okay, so Gecko Moria, very sad to see it go, because I was about to start playing Black Yellow Luffy again, guys, because I was like, hey, if you can't beat him, join him, right? That was kind of my mindset, for at least from like a local scene, like, oh, I'll go to locals and play like a Black Yellow Luffy, because the deck felt super strong to me. I thought it was still super powerful, and Gecko Moria is one of those cards that can just win you a game by itself sometimes, especially depending on what you can pull out of the trash and whatnot, and you know, depending on the current game state and whatever. Okay, so that's it for Gecko Moria. I'm sure people might have wanted to hear more about me talking about that card. I don't know. If you want to know if I missed something, please ask me in the comment section. Please ask me in the comment section below. I'll say one more thing before we move on. I just put out a Black Yellow Luffy list. Guys, I was so serious about going back into Black Yellow Luffy because I thought for sure they're not going to ban Gecko Moria this go around. After the reprints, everyone talks about the reprints. I thought for sure they're not going to ban Gecko Moria this go around, especially seeing all the new cards coming out in OP11. We'll talk about that later, right? But, you know, I thought for sure this card was going to be safe. It was not, so now I have to come up with a new game plan. I have Black Yellow Luffy sleeved on my table right now, ready to go to a locals with, but now I'm going to have to change that. Well, I guess I have till April 1st, right? Maybe we'll get one more run in with it, but until then, yeah, we'll have to, let me say this. I will be thinking of a way to replace Gecko in the deck to still make it playable. Because I think if you just remove 4 Gecko Morias and go up 4 of the ace that most people are not running anymore, or maybe go up like 2 of the 2-cost ace and 2 of the 5-cost ace, and then maybe take out 2 of the Rygos in the list I just posted and put in 2 of like Three Brothers Bond, the Searcher, because I was only running 2 anyway, or run 2 of the 5-cost Sabo that pops characters. I think we'll still be able to make something work there, trade in Viola and things like that so we can actually gain life. I don't think it's over for Black Yellow Luffy, but it's definitely going to be a major hit to the power level of the deck. Next up is Jinbei. Jinbei getting banned is a little bit weird to me. I understand it. It's a very strong card. For those who do not know what it does, 4-cost 5k, 1k counter, 7 Warlords of the Sea, and it can cheat out a 4-cost or lower 7 Warlords of the Sea from your hand. So it was very strong at the tempo element that was required to run like a blue 7 Warlords deck. But any deck that was running blue, I guess in the same way that any deck that was running black was probably running Gecko Moria, other than obviously Blackbeard that cannot run any on-play effects. It can't actually use the on-play effects. So other than Blackbeard, probably every single black deck was running Gecko Moria. Well, Jinbei was a similar idea, and I don't think Jinbei was nearly as strong as like what Gecko Moria was doing, because you are pulling cards from your hand. So for example, I have an entire, let me see, I've got like 7 or 8 games ready to go for a green-blue Zanji list, and I was running Jinbei and Weevil combos in there. And now the Jinbei's gone, that deck's probably just over with, right? That deck might just be done now. I don't know if I'll be able to pull green-blue Zanji out of it from this one. We'll see. Of course, I'm going to try. As a deck builder, we're going to try our best. But hear me out. For the Dofi mains out there, I actually think Dofi will still be very, very viable. I don't think he obviously, cards... If you're losing one of the cards in this list in your deck list, absolutely it's going to hurt, right? It's going to hurt for sure. But I think Jinbei, Law will still be very strong. I was actually expecting a 2-cost Blackbeard ban for Jinbei, so that way it didn't affect any of the other decks who need the Jinbei to run in their list, like Green Blue Zanji and whatnot. But at the same time, it's not the end of the world, that's for sure. Hopefully they print more support for all the other decks coming up soon here. But I've said this before. I do think Jinbei was an overtuned card, because I honestly think the card should have been a 5-cost 6k with a 1k counter that cheats out of 4 or less. And then I think the card would have been completely balanced, because then you can't play it with your leader's effect and then play a card from that and fill the board out a little too efficiently and effectively while swinging for 7,000. I thought that was a little too strong. But... excuse me, a card that I thought was actually just strictly better than Jinbei within the whole blue, Dofi list, I thought was the 4-cost Law that bounces cards. Because the way that card can kind of go infinite, right? I can always just play that card out to bounce your card out of my way and bring the card back to my hand. Or bounce back a Searcher to my hand to get more value in that way. I just feel like that card's a little bit more of the problem. But here's the thing. If the Trafalgar Law, the 4-cost Trafalgar Law is a little more powerful than Jinbei, and they only remove the Jinbei, maybe Dofi has a better chance still, and maybe he'll still be able to make something work in the meta. I don't know. You guys tell me. But I would like to know what you guys think. If they were just trying to nerf Dofi a little bit, Blue Doflamingo a little bit, do you guys think it would have been better to ban the Jinbei or ban the Trafalgar Law? Because I think Jinbei was a card that was needed to keep the deck relevant, whereas Trafalgar Law made it too strong. So removing the Trafalgar Law means I still get to flood the board, but with characters that don't have as powerful effects. Again, I'm kind of curious as to what you guys think about the Jinbei ban. What card did you guys want banned in Doflamingo? Because I heard a lot of different options for that, between the 2-cost Blackbeard, Jinbei, of course. I've heard people say Edward Weevil. I've heard people say the Boa Hancock, the 4-cost 6k Boa, the 4-cost Trafalgar Law. I've even heard people say Perfume Femur, right? There's a lot of different interesting ideas on what to ban for Dofi, but they chose Jinbei. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Please tell me in the comment section below. My biggest concern losing Jinbei, I don't play Blue Doflamingo. I can play it, but it's not something I really care for. But I really liked Jinbei in my green-blue Zanji list. So I'm very sad to see that card go. But at the same time, maybe we'll be able to make something work with Brook or something like that. And I guess maybe that puts it in perspective as to how strong Jinbei really is, or really was in this case. It's a 4-cost 5k with a 1k counter that cheats out a character that costs 4 or less. So it's a 4-cost cheating out a 4-cost, okay? Guys, we've already had Brook in the game, the 4-cost 5k, 1k counter film Straw Hat character that can cheat out a 3 or less. Okay, so it really is it is kind of a clear example of what power creep can look like within the game. But unfortunately, I do think this is going to be a very harsh blow to Dofi. But I think they might be able to still make something work. I think it probably drops at least half a tier, though, losing Jinbei. Because, yes, they still have the Trafalgar Law to bounce cards. They still have the Weevil to draw cards and go big. They have the Boa. They have all of their other answers. They just can't flood the board as aggressively with Jinbei. What do you guys think in the comments section below? Is Blue Dofi cooked now, or are they going to start recooking with Dofi and put something in the place of Jinbei? Maybe like a new, maybe like the 4-cost Gecko Morias to get cards back from your trash, or maybe they'll get the 4-cost 6K Vanilla Gecko Moria. I think there's a new Crocodile coming out in EB02. I do think there are some other pretty cool options to fill in the gaps when losing Jinbei. All of these cards, I'll probably be revisiting decks that run them in the near future to kind of see how they're going to function without the banned cards. Okay. All right, so that's Jinbei. Again, really curious to hear what you guys have to say about that. What card did you want banned from Dofi? From Blue Dofi to lower it down in the power level, but still keep it playable? Or was it Jinbei, and why or not, all that kind of good stuff. I'm curious to see what you guys think about it. Because I think if I got to pick, it would have been the 4-cost Trafalgar Law. Let them keep the Jinbei, and then they can have fun like that. Just don't bounce my characters back. Just be able to do stuff on the board otherwise. And then they can still have access to Jozu later on to bounce their own characters if they need to for tricks and bounce mine. Okay, that's enough about Jinbei. Next up is Ice Age. Ice Age is one of those cards that was a really, really divisive pick, I think, for a lot of people. A lot of people saw this one as like, why would they ban Ice Age? Why on earth would they ban Ice Age? It's a -1 in hand, right? It's -1 in hand. It's like, well, not really, right? So it's not a -1 when you combine it with another card called Gecko Moria, right? When you played out the Gecko Moria, you played 2 cards from your hand, and you got 5 cards on the board, and then you removed 2 of their characters, right? So it ends up being a 2 for 7, right? It just becomes a little too powerful, and that's just a 9 Dawn investment. Sometimes it's just a 2 for 6 or a 2 for 7, but the point is that's pretty outrageous if you think about it. And especially the range that you were able to hit with a -5 from Ice Age. Guys, Brooke was hitting 5-cost characters, 6-cost characters with this effect, 7-cost characters if you're using the leader Lucci or Smoker to do another -1. It's just a little bit too much. And like, yes, you are trashing your -1. You're going -1 from your hand, trashing a card from your hand, but you're trashing a card from their board. It's a 1-to-1, but then you're still getting the advantage to attack in with whatever you had on the board, like or playing out a character to the board, like in the case of Brooke. So it's not really a -1. It's -1 from you to do -1 from them with other effects you already have on the board or bodies you're developing along the way. So it ends up becoming a very, very powerful card. Just understand, guys, for the newer players out there, to put Ice Age into perspective, same thing with Great Eruption. When these cards first came out, they were almost unplayable. They were almost completely unplayable because back then, every piece of removal you did, like whether it be the 3-cost Kobe, 6-cost Sakazuki, 5-cost Garp, you had to use the card and trash a card from your hand, and then whatever cost reduction you had to add on top of that, like Ice Age or Great Eruption. So you were basically 2 for 1ing or 3 for 1ing yourself just to remove one of their bodies from the board to develop your own body. Well, nowadays, that's gone, right? For example, Lucci, the 4-cost Rob Lucci, he's a 4-cost 6K that allows you to put 3 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck, which actually helps out in the late game if the game goes on long enough so you don't mill yourself. And then you're able to pop 2 different characters without trashing any more cards from hand unless you combo with an Ice Age or whatever. So it ended up becoming a little bit too much for the direction they were going with the game. Now, I've expressed other concerns with events. I think they've put too much removal on bodies. That's my personal opinion. I don't think that all the removal in this game should be pushed into characters. I actually think Rygo being a removal event was actually a pretty good thing for the game, but I think they handled that incorrectly for yellow. We'll talk about that card in just a minute. But I do think, for the most part, within One Piece, I think removal should be mainly, like pretty much designated to events. I think they should start trending away, going away from removal on bodies, because that ends up becoming such a huge power swing where I develop a body and you lose a body. That's like, okay, well that's a little bit, that's a 2 for 1, right? That's by default, that's a 2 for 1. I'm developing a body and I'm removing your body. So I got two for two for my one card from my hand. It's pretty powerful in that way. Whereas if you have removal on events alone, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm having to use this card from my hand, and now your guy's gone. That does a few other things too. Cards like Gecko Moria would not be nearly as good if the cards you're not pulling out from the trash had effects that could remove characters. Characters that remove characters, I feel like is a little bit too powerful this early on in the game's, growth and development and whatever. But back to Ice Age, I do think this card, I think it needed to go. I'm going to be honest. Now, a lot of people might say, or might ask the question, yeah, but did Gecko Moria and Ice Age need to go? Probably, to be honest with you, probably. But I think what they should have done in the place of this was remove Gecko Moria, remove Ice Age, and then reintroduce the one cost Great Eruption. I still hold, a lot of people do not agree with me on this, and that's fine. But I still think Great Eruption was a very well balanced card. And if anything, printing Tempest Kick was probably the bigger problem, because I think Great Eruption was just a very high utility balanced card, and I don't think that card needed to go anywhere. Maybe they need to reprint it in the future and lock it to Navy or something. Whatever they need to do. I actually think that was a pretty solid card from a design aspect and from a balance aspect, because it was just one cost for -2, and they would cycle you a card. I thought that was fine. But Ice Age, in the current, in this current iteration of the game here, -5 for 1 is pretty wild. I think most people would agree with that. It's a very powerful effect, and it has a trigger that can pop a 3 or less from the life. It just kind of doesn't have a huge downside. And I'm okay with this card being banned. I know a lot of people are going to be upset by that, but that's fine. To each their own. Everyone's going to have their own opinions on it. But you have to understand that all of these decisions that Bandai makes on what needs to be banned and restricted, that all is with the looking into the future and seeing what will be the best for the future of the game, keeping the game as healthy as possible, right? That's what we're really going for. Okay, we want to ensure that the future of this game is safe and healthy and has the potential for more and more growth and for balance. Okay. So that's all I really have to say about Ice Age. I know a lot of people think that, doing the double whammy here, getting rid of Gecko and Ice Age was a little bit, a little much. And maybe it is, but I do think that Black will still have its tools. Like, I think that Black will be able to, okay, you just get rid of all the Ice Ages now, and now you run more Kaidos, or you run Stussy, or it depends on what you're playing. Run more Jacks, run more Stussies, run more whatever. It will depend on what leader you're running, but there are other top-end options that will allow you to do a lot of very strong things still for Black with removal, but it will be a little more balanced in terms of, consistency, I think, because okay, now you're having to decide, do I want to replace my Ice Age with like a 9-cost Kaido or a 9-cost Stussy that can do what I need it to do, but now I have more top-end cards in my deck, less triggers, neither of them have a counter in that case, but hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I think it's going to help with the consistency of what Black was able to do with Gecko plus Ice Age. I think it will lower that consistency a little bit and bring things more into balance, more into check. Okay, last but not least, we have Kingdom Come, or what a lot of people call Rygo on the Sim. This is a 6-cost event. It has main, KO up to one of your opponent's characters, period, and then go down to 1 life. So if you're at 4 life, you go down to 1. If you're at 0 life, though, you just stay there. If you're at 2 life, you go down to 1. If you're already at 1 life, you stay at 1. It just drops your life to 1, okay? So with that in mind, that is a very powerful effect. And by the way, the trigger was basically Yamato, where I believe it was Yamato, where you can KO a character based on how much life you and your opponent have added together. So if you had 2 life and your opponent had 2 life, you could pop a 4 or less. Okay, so very, very powerful trigger. But that wasn't the main thing to run for. That wasn't the main reason to run this card. It was just a bonus. The main being able to KO any character in the game. So I think they actually kind of messed up with this. This was a little too early in the game's, early development, whatever you're going to call it, in its infancy here. I don't think this card needed to exist for yellow. Blue does have Red Rock, and some people might be saying that. I do want to talk about some cards that somehow evaded or avoided the ban list. We'll talk about that after Kingdom Come. Hopefully I remember. I just said that, spur of the moment. It just popped in my head. Hopefully I don't forget. But some people might be talking about Red Rock right now. Like, well, why isn't Red Rock on the list then? That's a decent question, to be honest. And, I think it's a fair question. But here's what I think they need to do in the future. I think that Red Rock probably should have been a 6-cost that can bounce any character to hand. Okay? And I think Rygo should have actually been a 6-cost that can bounce any character to the owner's life. Okay, and that's a big difference. Me giving you life for paying 6 Dawn, even though it might be a very powerful character, you know, like Gecko Moria or something, right? It might be a very powerful character. I think that's fine because, okay, yes, I did take your turn away by removing your character, but you're going to get him back later, potentially, you know, from your life if they even need it. It depends on, you know, how the game looks. But let me just say this. I understand them hitting Rygo. I don't think the card made sense to be in yellow. Like, this is a, I mean, I don't... Color identity in this game is kind of on the fence right now. I feel like they're trying to give every single color a little bit of too much of everything, because I actually wish that only like maybe 1 or 2 colors should have been the board flood colors in the game. But blue can flood the board. Well, they used to be able to with cards like Jinbei, right? And then green can flood the board with a bunch of different cards, you know, like the 7-cost Luffy, or there's other things as well. Red can flood the board with a few things. Yellow can flood the board with the Omen Holy. What else? Purple can flood the board with a bunch of different things, and even black was able to flood the board with characters like Gecko Moria. And who knows? Maybe this is their way of pulling that back in, saying, yeah, you know what? Let's fix color identity. Maybe we don't want black to be able to fill the board from the trash this consistently, and maybe we don't want blue to be able to fill the board this consistently with a card like Jinbei. And that's an interesting idea, and I like that overall. I don't think every color should have access to mechanics from every single color, because I want the colors to feel, you know, as unique as possible. You know, black having cost reduction, let me say this real quick. I wouldn't be surprised if they start moving away from cost reduction and focus black more on like just hard removal, just straight removal that doesn't have cost reduction built in, and then maybe, you know, more to do with, you know, trash recursion, or, you know, using your trash more, and then maybe negation. Like, maybe those will be the 3 primary things about black, and maybe they'll start moving away from cost reduction, because guys, we've seen what's happened now with cost reduction in this game. Great Eruption's gone. Ice Age is gone. The stage is gone. In Innie's Lobby, or whatever it's called, is gone. So cost reduction may be a little bit too powerful, more powerful than what they intended. Maybe they're going to have to restrict that earlier on, or later on down the road, to like specific types only, so you can't double up on them and have you know, unpredictable consequences like what we see with Ice Age just being in every single black deck. Okay, but going back to yellow here, going back to Kingdom Come, I think yellow should have been, I might have already said this, but I think the effect for Kingdom Come, it should have been a 6-cost main effect that puts a character of any cost into the owner's life. I think that would have been a more thematically appropriate and more balanced approach to a card like this within the yellow card pool. Because, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I think a few cards should exist in the game that are probably like Red Rock, but not for every color. So, for example, Red now has a 6-cost Honesty Impact. That's like their version of Red Rock. You know, for Red, their version of Red Rock is kind of like Honesty Impact, which is a 6-cost red event. It came out in OP. It's coming out in OP 11. And it's a 6 cost that can pop a 6,000 power character and minus 4,000 power to another character, which has a lot of powerful utility to it. Power and utility, right? Powerful utility with it by manipulating power and popping characters. Okay, and then Red Rock is able to bottom deck a character. I actually think it should have pushed it to hand, and I think that would have been a little more balanced, to be completely honest. Because then it's like, okay, if you're just trying to slow your opponent down, they might replay the card out next turn, and now you have to really consider if that's the right call, if it had a very powerful on-play effect. With a card like Rygo, okay, or Kingdom Come, as it's technically called, that card, if it could just push things to life, I think it'd be a little more balanced and thematically appropriate to yellow. Okay, black, I think, should have a card like Rygo. I actually think black should have a 6-cost card that can KO a character, period. I mean, no cost requirement whatsoever, because black's main thing is removal, or so I thought. Maybe they're moving away from that and going more into the trash and negation part of it. I don't know, but I think Rygo is almost like a black card in disguise. I think they kind of messed that up a little bit. So ultimately, guys, I think they're having a little bit of trouble with determining, you know, the direction they want to take yellow with some of this stuff. Like, how much can we give them, you know, especially based off life, you know, losing life. You know, with purple, they've basically given purple every single option in the game at the cost of going Dawn minus, right? Okay, we'll make it where they have to sacrifice Dawn to get this super powerful effect from other colors. And I think with yellow, they haven't quite figured out how they want to do the life manipulation. Like, okay, maybe we'll give them access to options from every single other color at the cost of taking a life. You know, maybe that's the direction they're going to go in the future. We'll have to see how they decide to work that out. But overall, I think they're doing a pretty good job of this. I think these bans are all a step in the right direction. Now, I want to talk about two, maybe three cards that somehow avoided the list here that a lot of people have been talking about. First up, we have to talk about another one-cost event in the form of Gum Gum Giant. I know a lot of people are very upset about not seeing that on here, and I have to say that I'm a little bit surprised that Gum Gum Giant is not on this list. I'm slightly surprised, I'm not going to lie, because I have been doing a lot of testing in OP11, and remember, guys, these cards on the screen that you see right here, these cards are about to be gone. But Gum Gum Giant's not going anywhere, and we're already seeing how well blue and purple Luffy is doing over in the East, okay? And even green-purple Luffy, too, by the way. But we'll see. That doesn't mean that things are going to be broken and unbalanced. Excuse me. There might be some other options. I think green, the color green in general, is going to benefit probably the most from these bans. Guys, tell me down in the comment section below, which color do you think benefits the most from these cards being banned? Because I think green probably gets the most benefit from this. Removing Ice Age and removing Gecko means that they won't be able to go as wide consistently and remove as much consistently from yellow, unless they do some big alterations in the deck, going more Kaidos, Jacks, and Stussies or something. I don't know. You guys tell me. But in my mind, it makes sense that maybe green is the one who benefits the most from these kind of nerfs to the format, these kind of bans. Excuse me, but I'm not really sure. But overall, blue-purple Luffy. Blue purple Luffy, green purple Luffy, all these purple Luffys, even red purple Luffy. There's all kinds of different purple Straw Hat decks right now, most of which named Luffy. They're or at least the leaders. You guys know what I mean. They're all running this new one cost event called Gum Gum Giant, GGG for short, right? Triple G, and this card. It's pretty good. It's what I would consider to be slightly overtuned. And I get it. They can't just ban every card, guys. We're not asking for that. Don't get too crazy there. Don't be ridiculous. But I do think that Gum Gum Giant might be a little bit too overtuned. And now with all of these cards we see on the front screen here banned, I wonder how those decks will do now. Will there be enough to stop them? We'll have to see. And like I said, now with all these cards banned, other decks might be able to rise up as well. Bello Betty might become a much better deck in the format. It stays aggressive. One of its worst matchups, if not its worst matchup, was Blue Doflamingo. Maybe Red-Yellow Bello Betty becomes a little bit better and can battle against some of these purple Straw Hat decks. I should just call them Gum Gum Giant decks at this point. Maybe even green will be able to step up and deal with that, or red. We'll have to see what happens. I have no idea. I don't think anyone knows yet. We'll have to see. What do you guys think in the comments section below? And let me just say that in general. Do you guys think Gum Gum Giant should have been on this list? Or what are some cards you think should have been on this list that I don't mention in today's video? Because I'm going to mention like one more card, I think. But tell me, guys, which card do you think should have been on here that was not on this list? Right? Like, which card? I was saying Gum Gum Giant. I think that card is potentially very dangerous for the future health and development and balance of the game. But it's not on here. It's not on here. And that's fine. It's not a big deal, right? It's fine that card's not on here. But at the same time, hopefully they keep a real close eye on Gum Gum Giant and don't let that get too far out of control. Because I am very curious to see how it shapes up over the next few sets after seeing what I've seen from OP11. Okay, now one other card that I did want to at least mention is Rebecca. Rebecca is one of those cards that kind of avoided the bans as well. A lot of people were suggesting that Rebecca be one of the bans instead of Gecko Moria, but I will say this: I do agree with the Gecko Moria ban over the Rebecca ban, and that was something I was pushing for a long time. And please understand where I come from on all this, guys, as we're kind of summarizing and finishing up this section of the video. I am not for bans. I don't like bans. I wish the developers were perfect and they did a perfect job and we lived in a perfect utopia. Yeah, but we don't, right? That's real nice and all. But I don't like bans. Okay, but sometimes they are definitely warranted when a situation happens like what we see here, where Gecko Moria really is used in every single black deck, except a black deck they made that specifically was not able to run Gecko Moria. Right, talking about Blackbeard. Any other black deck is going to run it, whereas not every black deck is going to run Rebecca. Black Yellow Luffy, they don't have to run Rebecca. They have Gecko and their 2-cost characters to pull out of the trash. So it's like, it's one of those things where I get it. Hey, if we removed Rebecca from the game instead of Gecko Moria, yep, it's true, Black Yellow Luffy would not have been touched, and then things would have probably still been very powerful, but I think Black would have just kept on doing everything it normally does, but it would not be able to do the fully extended combo. You would just have to, instead of going 4-cost Rebecca into Spandine into Lucci, you just pull back the Lucci and the Helmeppo, so you still pop the characters you need to, and you still develop a pretty solid wide board. But, you know, it's, you know, you just lose the extra blocker there, which is powerful. I'm not saying it's not good. And, you know, the Rebecca coming back can also get a card from the trash, right? But the idea still remains the same. When you play out the Gecko Moria, you're filling out the board and popping 2 characters regardless. Whereas if you, you know, if you get rid of the Gecko, you're not doing that at all. You might be able to play out a Rebecca for 4, which is a 0 power blocker, and it can pull out a Lucci from the trash, but then how are you going to get back the other character from the trash like the Helmeppo? You just can't do it. So I understand where they were going with the Gecko Moria, and I think that was the correct choice for the ban. I know a lot of people were upset with it. I get it. But hear me out, guys. I do think Black Yellow Luffy's not done, and I think they're going to be able to probably, hey, we'll see what happens in OP13. I'm sure they're going to print some type of way to replace that effect that they would deem a little more balanced for Black Yellow Luffy in OP13. I know it's a long way away, but I think that's what the rumors are. We'll have to see if those are actually true or not. I don't actually know. Don't quote me on it. I'm just saying from what I've heard, you know, through the rumor mill, right? Through the rumor mill, I've heard OP13 is going to be about the Three Brothers Bond, ST13, and it's going to probably have some type of complementary feature or function there to hopefully replace something Gecko Moria was doing for the deck. And if they could make it a yellow card, that would be really nice. So that way all the Three Brothers would have access to it. We'll have to see what happens. Okay. There are some other cards, of course, like I said, that I would have liked to talk more about, like with bans and restrictions, but we're not going to go there in today's video. But hey, hopefully that helped out. Hopefully that put some things into perspective for people. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. Was there a card I missed? Was there a card out there you really wish would have been banned? Is there a card you really wish had not been banned? Like, give us some ideas why, you know, if you want to in the comment section below. Very curious as to what everyone's going to say about this. Now, we got, let's go ahead and move on to the next section here. We got to talk about a new leader entering into the game here. Now, I don't know when this is going to be. I don't know what set this will be. But Goldie Roger has finally been announced to be joining the game as a leader card in a future set. I don't know when the set will be. Who knows? It could be a starter deck. It could be in one of the future sets. Whatever the case is, we have some other information about it as well. That's right. You see at the top right, they've given us a very small spoiler. It is a red-purple leader. Okay, it's going to be a red-purple leader. At least that's what the current speculation is. I got this off one of the Discords with 7,000 power. Slash character makes sense, right? Of course. But it's a 7,000 power red-purple leader. I wonder how much life he'll have. I wonder what his effect will be. And I'm just going to say, guys, I just did a market watch yesterday at the time of recording this. Please, if you don't have your 10-cost secret rare Goldie Rogers, I would at least snag 2 real quick just to be safe. Better safe than sorry in case this leader becomes absolutely busted or insane or awesome or fun or whatever. Okay? I'm just saying. That's something that I would recommend you do. And if you do, please don't forget to use my affiliate link. I'd really appreciate it. It helps me out big time. Okay? Now, that's a quick little in-between announcement there, a little quick little update. Remember, guys, if this is true that it's going to be a red-purple leader with 7,000 power, first of all, 7,000 power is crazy. But if it's going to be a red-purple leader, red, you have access to the 10-cost secret rare Goldie Roger. Purple, you have access to ramp. You're just going to ramp to 10 as fast as you can. And instead of slamming down something like a 10-lin, like what we see in Pudding, or in Blue-Purple Luffy slamming down a 9-cost or 8-cost character, well, you're going to slam down the 10-cost Roger, you know, Goldie Roger. That could be really, really awesome. All right, guys, last but not least, we got introducing block numbers. Well, that's kind of misleading. I think it should actually say introducing block rotations, and we'll talk about that more as we get into this part of it, guys. But starting from April 1st, 2026 and onwards, they're going to be introducing what are known in other games as block rotations, okay? Let me show you guys what that means. Now, this has been in the game since the beginning. The block numbers have been in the bottom right corner of every card from the beginning of this game. Let me go, actually, let's just stay on the slide for a second. Let me also move my face out of the way a little bit. So how do blocks work? Let me explain that real quick. So every 4 sets, a set comes out every 3 months, right? So after 4 sets, that's 1 year, right? 3, 6, 9, 12. That's 1 year. So every set, or a set comes out every 3 months. 4 sets is 1 year. That ends up being 1 block. All of the other decks that come out in that time, like EX, or what do they call it, like EB01, PRB, starter decks, things like that, all of the decks that come out within a 4-set range, those are part of one block, okay? So from OP01 to OP04, and every starter deck and extra booster set or whatever came out in the middle of those are all block 1, okay? Now going into block 2, as you can see in the middle here, that's OP05 through OP08, and every single type of extra piece of, extra collections, starter decks or whatever that came out in the middle there, all of those are block 2, and then OP9 to 12 will be block 3, OP13 to 16 will be 4, and so on and so forth. Every 4 sets and the stuff that comes out in between them will be part of that block. Now here's the thing. From April 2026 onwards, only Block 2 and 3 will be valid for playing in championships and official tournaments. This will be known as the Standard Regulation Tournament. Now, a lot of people are probably freaking out right now. Please calm down. Hear me out real quick. This is one of the best possible things that could have happened for this game. I know a lot of people like to get upset up front, like, well, no, my cards won't matter anymore. What about all my OP01 and OP04 cards? Well, here's the thing, guys. They do reprint. Okay, I'll go over it in a second. Let me go over these slides first. Let me say it like this. I come from Magic the Gathering. That's like the game that got me into TCGs many, many years ago, almost 20 years ago now. And even before that, I was messing around with like Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, Magic cards way back before I knew how to play them. That was something I always had my eye on and all that. But I didn't start really competing and like playing in Magic the Gathering really competitively, at least in a local sense, until about 20 years ago. Okay, so hear me out. This system here of block rotations is really, really good for a game, because new players coming into this game will get overwhelmed if they have to pick up 3 years worth of cards. Well, imagine and that's if they're coming into the game right now, they have to pick up 3 years worth of cards. So imagine in like 15, hey, we all want this game to grow, right? We want this game to last 10, 15, 20, 30, however many years. Okay, well, if that's the case, we need to keep enticing new players to get into the game. If we don't have a block rotation system set up, new players aren't going to want to get into the game. Okay, at least that's been my experience from everyone I've ever talked to, and that goes for myself as well. A big factor for me getting into One Piece when I did was I got into it during the second set. OP01 had just come out, OP01 was out, OP02 had just come out, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll get into it, especially since it's this early. If I like the game, I can just get all the cards really quickly and go from here. Well, if you're a new player entering into this game, like let's just say 5, 10 years in the future, you're going to have to get that many years worth of cards to get, back stock from. And by that time, some of those original cards might be through the roof in price. You don't know how the market's going to go with the rarity of these cards, with how many people start, who enter into the game in the future. There's just so many unknowns. So using a system like block rotations just fixes all of that. Okay. Now let me go to the next slide here, because guess what? Your old cards, they won't be null and void. They won't be gone. I mean, banned cards are banned cards, but check this out, guys. Notice this. Notice in the set before here, or this slide before, we've got this little rectangle here going around 2 and 3. We'll watch this. We go forward one slide, and now it's around 1, 2, and 3. Tournaments with all cards being available will be called extra regulation tournaments. So in other words, if you go into an extra regulation tournament, you'll still have access to all the cards in the game. Okay, now there might still be bans and restriction lists, put in place to balance things like that, but the idea is you will still be able to use all your cards at these extra regulation tournaments. And who knows, it all depends on where you're at, how your local scene is. Maybe if you have a really, conservative, stubborn local scene, that's fine. I'm not judging anyone's local scene, but maybe maybe your group can always do the extra regulation tournament. Maybe that's something you can work out at your local area. Okay, now with that in mind, this block number rotation system, check it out real quick. Notice they're showing an example of Nami. So on the left is the current card Nami, and on the right is pretty much the same exact card, if I'm looking at this correctly. I think they even have the same block number of 1 down here. Yeah, they have the same block number, but check this out. So the current cards right here on the left, but over to the right, they're saying in 2026 and onwards, reprinted cards will have the latest block icon. So say they reprint Nami in the future, which that is something they typically do in these block rotation games. They almost always reprint the staples to be available in standard. That makes it easier for them as designers to reprint a card like that, and it makes it easier for us older players because we already have the copies we need. You don't have to buy the newest one with the newest block number down at the bottom right. Okay, so for example, say Nami gets reprinted in block 10 in the future. Okay, well, if I have a block 1 Nami and it's the same exact card, like we're talking text for text, number and everything, well, guess what? We'll be completely fine. Actually, the number is a little bit questioned. That is interesting about the block number. I wonder if it would still say OP01 on there and so on and so forth. That's something we'll have to look into. But the idea is this. If a card named Nami in the future is a 1 cost just like this one, a 2,000 power just like this one, a counter like this one, and the same exact text like this one, and it gets reprinted in the future with a different block number at the bottom right, it doesn't matter. You'll be able to use your original one as well. Or, and that applies to any of your cards. Say you have an alt art for it, that's fine as long as it's the same card and it's legal in the standard format, then you'll be able to use it. Okay? Both cards will be valid instead at the bottom. Check this out. They're trying to show us, like, hey guys, don't worry. We already know. We've already predicted. We've anticipated what your concerns will be. What about all my mangas? What about all my alt arts? What about all the cards I've spent all this money on in the game? From April 2026 onwards, the above cards will still be usable for standard regulation tournaments. More cards are scheduled to be added to the list depending on movements in future tournaments. Okay, so they could reprint these cards in the future. There's a lot of different things that you'll be able to do to still play your older cards that have a lot of high value. Okay, now a few things I've heard people talk about, complain about. I understand these are, I can understand where they're coming from. Is like, yeah, but what if my leader goes away? That one is tough. What will probably happen, though, is they only have so many characters in One Piece. I know One Piece has a ton of characters. A lot of characters don't even have leaders yet, right? And I'm talking about characters in terms of, like, the anime, the manga. There's a lot of different characters in the anime and the manga that don't even have a leader yet, like Brook, Frankie, there's a bunch of them, right? Well, hear me out. In the future, they're probably just going to reprint the fan favorites. That would just be smart on their part. The cards will sell. It'll make everyone happy. It's just good for everybody. So typically speaking, with staples or really popular fan favorite cards, those get reprinted a lot of times in whatever the new standard block is. That happens all the time in games that have the block rotation stuff. And again, I'm mainly only speaking from knowledge from Magic the Gathering. I think Magic has block rotations, and so I know Magic does. But then I also think that not Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon does as well. There might be a few others that have block rotations and stuff like that, but I know Pokemon, I'm pretty sure Pokemon does, I know Magic does, but I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh does. I think Yu-Gi-Oh does not have block rotations, they just deal with a huge ban list. Now, real quick, guys, I'm going to try to sell you on this, because this is the last slide here. I think this is one of the best things that could have ever happened to this game. And I know some people are freaking out, like, what do you mean I'm about to lose, some of my cards, maybe even the value of my cards are going to go down? Not necessarily. If you look at some of the earliest versions of Magic the Gathering cards, remember, guys, that game's like 30-something years old now, I think. Those cards are going for a lot of money. The super rare cards from the early sets, those are going for a ton of money. Well, here's the thing. If the designers of the game do not future-proof their game, like make it where they don't fail, in the immediate, the near future here, if they don't do that, the game doesn't keep going, and therefore it kind of starts to lose value, right? Because if this game ends up dying off, like say they don't make it where they don't take good care of the game and it starts to die off, well, then you're going to lose the money on your investment anyway. Okay, for the collectors out there and the investors out there, you're going to lose your value in that way. But here's the thing, block rotations, I think, are the best thing that could happen for this game, because what it allows us to do is keep a nice, healthy, balanced standard format, and then go from there. Okay, and then we still will, it also opens up these extra formats, these extra regulation formats as well, but standard regulation is typically what they call any game for the format that is the most competitive. That ends up being the standard or constructed format, typically speaking, in a card game, and that's where all your big tournaments are held in. For the more local players, you're going to have your extra regulation tournaments, or, for the more casual players who like to stay at locals, you'll be able to probably venture more into the extra regulation tournaments. Just talk to the store owner where you go to at your locals, or the tournament coordinator, whoever they are. There's going to be ways to do that. So you'll still have access to all your old cards. However, doing it through this means here, by doing it through this method here, of having a block rotation system, it is extremely important for a concept here. Think about the future long-term health of the game, the health and development and growth of the game, by making it where you're only having to deal with 2 to 3 blocks of cards at a time. The developers are going to be able to learn from their mistakes and make adaptations and fixes on the fly. Like, okay, we're going to get rid of Gecko Moria, right? I think I used this example earlier. We're going to get rid of Gecko Moria, and we'll reprint it in the future, in a future block, where it's going to be more balanced than it was before. Any card that gets banned in the past, they're going to now be able to build off that idea and reprint a newer, better version of the card. Not better as far as, like, it won't be more broken, broken, but a more balanced, a more fine-tuned version of the card in the future. That's an option they'll be able to have. And again, guys, I wouldn't worry about all the really strong staple cards that are really important for a certain color. Typically speaking, those cards become what are known as staples, and they will reprint those in the future. Okay, so if you already have your copy of them, let's just give an example. Let's go back to the last slide here. Let's just say you have a playset of these 5-cost Sabos, right? Not the manga. You don't need that. You don't need the manga version. It's not pay to win. Okay, at this point, you'll be able to run any version of these cards. I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think they're trying to show the mangas here to show like these are super expensive cards, and they're trying to show like, hey, don't worry, we're going to take care of the people who have these expensive cards. They're not just going to go to waste. You will be able to play these in the future, but I think it's going to come down to them reprinting them in the future on not reprinting the mangas per se, but reprinting the same card in the future in a new block, so that way it makes the old version legal again. Okay, so in the case of Sabo right here, like let's just use this 5-cost Sabo example. Say there's a deck in the future you want to run like 5 of these or 4 of these of the 5-cost Sabo, and you want to run a full play set, but you don't want to buy the new Sabo from the whatever the new block is, the new set is. Well, if it's the same card, well, you'll just be able to use your old versions, and now you don't have to pay for that card. You're good to go. So this version helps out the old school players and the newer players. If less people are having to buy the card because they've already owned them for years from previous versions, that'll drop the price down for the new players trying to enter into the game. Let's talk about the new players now. So for the old players, again, don't worry. Your cards will still be fine. All the important staple cards that you probably wanted to spend money on and get, alt arts for and all that good stuff to make your deck look really cool. Well, those, more often than not, will probably be, pushed into the next block if they're like fan favorites. Yes, some cards will get left behind, I'm sure. Some leaders will probably get left behind as well, and that's something that older players really don't care for, and I understand that, but it gives them a chance to improve on the leader in future sets. Okay, which is a big deal. Imagine if they make a better blue-purple Croc in the future. Okay, imagine if they make a better blue-purple Kaido in the future. Imagine if they make a better red-purple Uda in the future. You see what I'm saying? Because now they know, okay, this Uda that we made back in OP whatever, back in block 1 or block 2, it wasn't strong enough. So now in block 5, 6, or 7, let's make just a straight-up stronger version building off of that. So yeah, in that case, you wouldn't be able to use your old version of the leader. It's true, but at the same time, you'll be able to have, a better version of Uda, the character you like so much. Now, I will say that some people are saying, like, maybe they should never ban the leaders with this block rotation system. Maybe. Maybe that is an idea to not ban the leaders, because in general, leaders cost nothing, right? Leaders cost almost nothing, but I understand why they would still ban the leaders in this case, to print a better version of them, and you could just go from there. But we'll have to see. That part I don't know enough about, but from what I understand, guys, anything that is of a certain block, like we were just looking at here, any leader that was in block 1, if they don't carry it over to block 2 or 3 through some other means, like through a reprint, then it'll be gone. You won't be able to use it in the standard regulation tournament. Then you'll have to play it in the extra regulation tournament. So you'll still, even then, will be able to use it. All right, now let's focus on the newer players for a second. Imagine how important this is for the newer players. This game is still very young. It's still growing. It's only 3 years old now. It's going into its 3 years, right? We've gone through the first 2 years. We're into the 3rd year now. And now, new players entering into the game right now have to go through like thousands of cards, right? Or maybe 1,000 cards. I don't know the exact number, to be honest, guys. I don't know off the top of my head. But hear me out. New players have to look at this and go, wait, okay, I have to go back from set. We're in set 10 in the West now. The East just got into set 11. We're getting caught up with the East soon. We'll all be on the same set, probably around 12, probably around set 12 or 13. We should probably all be on the same set at that point in the East and the West. Okay. Here's the thing, though. If a new player comes into the game in block 4, which will start set 13 and going to 16, if they come into the game at that point, they're going to have to sift through 12 other sets just to get caught up. That is overwhelming for a new player, and that's only after 3 years. Imagine this game keeps going 15, 16, 20 years down the road, 25 years down the road. Who knows, right? We have no idea yet. Say this game stays healthy for 10, 15, 20 years. Well, if a new player comes into this game and there's no standard format where you only have to deal with 2 to 3 blocks at a time, they have to go back 10 to 15 years. What it does is it pushes away new players. It drives away the new players. We don't ever want that, guys. We literally never, ever want that, because at the point where we start making it where it's not enticing for new players to join, the point where we start discouraging new players from joining the game, that's the very point where the game starts to die. And we don't want that to happen. We don't ever want that to happen. So again, guys, if you're an older player and you're getting getting into this, you know, or excuse me, if you're like a veteran player at this game and you have all the cards and you're scared about the value of your cards or your favorite leader going away, I would try to not worry about that. Number one, I think there's something like 100 leaders in the game right now. There's got to be another leader out there for you to have fun with, okay? And I get it, you know, people are very picky about stuff like that. No, I want it my way. It's got to be my one leader or nothing. It's hard for me to understand that, but I get what you're saying. For me, it doesn't compute, right? Because I play every single leader in the game. But for the players who are super loyal to just a single leader, I get it. But hey, in the future, what if they print a better version of that leader? You know, they could do that, right? And you would have probably moved to that anyway, whether they got rid of the old version or not. And that's kind of like the mindset that I would keep towards it. But again, if you're one of the more veteran players, I think this is a really, really good thing for the game. It allows the designers to deal with a smaller group of cards to keep those nice and balanced. It allows them to fix older versions of cards and make them more tuned into what they want. They can make a better, more refined, more I think a more complete product using this method. So it's good for the designers of the game. It's good for the old players in the game too to have a more strict tournament format versus a more wider you know, extra regulation tournament for the more casual games, or maybe just to introduce a new game mode. Hey, that's where my game mode's going to be at. For those who have not tried my 3D, excuse me, I almost said 3D2Y. No, the 3C2L, or the 2C3L, 3C2L format that I made up, where it's meant to be across all formats as singleton, almost like Commander style, but you get 3 colors and 2 leaders. That's something I mess with. Check out the Discord for more information on that. But hear me out. Opening up this kind of format with the block numbers, the block rotations, I think is really, really good for the future health of the game, the future growth of the game, the future balance and development of the game. Just all around, I think it's really good. For the veteran players, you're going to keep your game alive longer, making your investment last even longer. And then for the newer players that come in the future, it's going to be easier for them to get into the game. And then for the developers, for the designers of the game, it's going to be easier to balance. I just don't see a downside to this, guys. I'm sorry. If you have a downside, by all means, say it down in the comment section below. I understand there's going to be small, you know, quibbles about this, that, and the other. Again, like I said, like, yeah, but what if they get rid of my favorite leader? You know, well, hey, you can always play it in this version right here in the extra regulation tournament. You know what I mean? And and if they end up doing this, this will probably become a feature on a sim, or who knows, maybe a future app. We'll have to see what happens in the future. So it should never truly fully go away. You still have access to the older cards. You know, it's just set to a different regulation tournament. Okay. All right, guys, I'm done yapping about this. I hope you all enjoyed. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. I really want to know what you guys think about this. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. This was a lot to talk about today. Let me go and throw the outro page on here. Big shout out to everybody who supports the channel, guys. Whether you're liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, viewing, whatever you're doing to help out my channel, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And also, if you're using the TCG affiliate link, guys, if you're helping me out on Patreon, PayPal, donations, buying the playmat, becoming a YouTube member, becoming a member of the Discord community, whatever you're doing to help me out, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Again, please don't forget to like, subscribe. If I missed anything, hey, please help me in the comment section below, but let's be nice. Please, let's play nice down there, guys. I know this is going to be a very divisive topic in the community. Let's try to keep cool heads about this and not be too extreme. We're all people. We're all different people here. We all have different opinions. Let's just try to keep it civil, PG-13. All right, I'm done. Please don't forget to like, subscribe. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please put it down there in the comment section below, or hop on the VV Theory Discord. Links in the channel description. All right, till next time, guys. Peace.